As you could set your clock by this man. Daw QC has joined us in the studio. How are you, Chris?
I'm good, thanks, Ian. How are you?
Good. Nice to see you. Welcome to the new boudoir.
I mean, you're on camera all the time now.
Yeah, I mean, it's strange because we were always filmed, of course.
I know.
But this has taken it to another level.
So you'll be interested to know that I put out a tweet saying that I was about to appear on television with Britain's Best Dressed Man. And so far, I've had one like.
Really?
A picture of you accompanied the tweet, Ian.
Yeah, OK. I just thought it was a good thing to say, so I thought I'd click it. Nothing wrong with that.
I didn't check who the liker was, Ian, but now you've said that.
Conversely, I mean, you're normally, if you dress, because you have to wear the whole wig and the
which
gown
I promise to wear next time. I'm going to bring in for you.
Yeah.
So that your viewers can see it in all its glory. And in fact, I think you should wear it.
Am I allowed to wear your wig?
Yeah, of course you are. It's my wig. I'll let you wear it.
That's true.
You wouldn't be allowed to go to court and actually do cases in it.
Really?
If that's what you were
that's
thinking.
What I was hoping for.
Yeah, I know that. We've had this before.
4-ish. I'll be down at the Bailey by, what, 5:30?
You'd be down... yeah, well, there'd be nobody there by then.
I'll tell you what, if I was in there...
Yeah, you probably would be allowed in there at
This
5:30.
country would be a safer place within the hour.
If you were at the Old Bailey...
Yeah, if I was in there... I'd be prosecuting left, right and centre. 20 years, 6 years, yeah, it'd all be... Yeah. I'd have it all sorted out. So this story, by the way, that I just teased there for a second, about prison guards being told... I didn't know this, that probably not everywhere, but in some places, they've been instructed to call prisoners clients.
Yeah, I have to say, I suspect that this is one of those sort of Kentucky Fried Mouse type stories. There's probably about 2 places in the country where they have a rule along these lines. It's really important that we don't label people in prison as just being criminals and nothing else.
No, scrotes is the answer, isn't it?
Oh, come off,
yes.
Ian. So I spent some time in a young offenders institution up in Scotland, and they call all of the residents of the establishment young people. They don't call them young offenders or inmates or prisoners, and these are teenagers. And there's a very good reason for that. It's because when people come out of prison or any form of custodial environment, the last thing you want is for them to just have been completely institutionalised as a criminal.
Yeah.
Because they're going to be a criminal when they come out if you do that.
But do you not need to acknowledge that they are very, very horrible people that are in there while they're on Seaweek?
Most of them are not.
Ring the bell, right, horrible people, out your cells, get down to the play area, do some snooker and come back.
Ian, you and I both know that most of the people in there are not horrible people at all. They're people who have had, deep disadvantages in life and serious mental health and other addiction and all sorts of problems, abuse and everything else in their lives, often going back to their childhood. And the last thing they need is to be victimised all over again in the prison.
So you go to prison as a punishment, not to be punished while you're there. All of that stuff.
But more importantly, you go to prison so that when you come out, you should be a better person, more likely to walk the straight and narrow path.
I always agree with that. You owe it to the next potential victim, as it were, to make sure that the perpetrator doesn't continue to be a perpetrator. I understand that, but also, I mean, the bit where we sometimes slightly part company, Chris, is because I know you don't want to send anybody to jail and you want to live in this kind of nice sort of paradise where everybody just walks around and you say you're a very bad boy for carrying out those multiple murders. So off you go.
Whereas you, on the other hand, just like to oversimplify.
Go to the park and do some mindfulness, you bad man. You bad client.
That is the exact diametric opposite of what I want to do, Ian. And your sarcasm doesn't befit your new status as one of Britain's leading TV presenters.
It is in the contract, though, I have to say. But listen, I mean, there is surely a balancing act here, Chris, isn't there? Between, the idea that you get to up close, personal and cosy. It's not a hotel, it is a jail. So it's meant to be a regime in there, put it that way. I don't think that your
language is very helpful. The point of prison is to turn out people who don't go back again. Not to spend the whole time trying to sort of shame them and, it's like that scene out of Game of Thrones, where she sort of... Everyone shouts shame as she walks down the street. That's not what it's supposed to be about. It's about recognising that people have committed crimes, and how the hell do we make sure they don't do it again?
I get that, and I understand that you're right. That can't. You are to repeat the point. You're there to as a punishment, not to be punished while you're there. However, there's got to be a sense of punishment when you're serving a sentence beyond just the lack of freedom.
Why has there?
Because you don't want people to go back there again. If it was so horrible...
They do go back there in. They're going back. That's the point. They're all going back. Nearly every one of them goes back because it's such a waste of time.
Because we don't imprison people for long enough.
No, because we don't imprison people. We imprison people, too many people, for far too long.
Here's 12 weeks. Here's 3 months.
Oh, come on, Ian,
6 weeks.
listen, you and I both know, and you know this because I've been on your programme more than once, you know that we are now imprisoning more people in this country than ever before for longer than ever before. That's the truth. We have over 80,000 in prison. That's double the number we had when I became a lawyer in the 1990s. And the average amount of time that people spend in prison is double per crime. So we're not soft on crime. We're not sort of, the judges are not letting all these people out with a slap on the wrist, as some of the headlines would suggest. What's happening is we're overusing prison. We're drifting towards the American model of mass incarceration, and the consequences, I'm afraid, are being paid by people on our streets.
You say 80,000. Tomorrow that could be 80,001, because Boris Becker could be in the chiller this time tomorrow as he's sentenced for his bad tax arrangements.
Yeah, it's a very sad case, isn't it? Because you probably remember, as I do, the sight of 17-year-old Boris Becker.
He's a hero of mine, sporting hero.
Absolutely. A unique achievement of a 17-year-old walking out onto centre court and winning the Wimbledon trophy. It's never been repeated, and I doubt...
Not just any 17-year-old, but a ginger 17-year-old.
Well,
so
I'm
a
saying
specific
nothing about that.
achievement, I think we can add there.
About that. The Equality Act, I'm sure, probably does apply.
Yeah, probably. That's Ofcom right there, isn't it? I think,
yeah, you've done it, Ian. You've done it. See how I didn't say anything positive and supportive of your anti-ginger?
Yeah, well, you're a defence barrister, so, you are able to, employ all the mechanisms.
Yeah, but I'm a witness to your anti-gingerness. Anyway.
I am a man with a ginger son as well, I should say.
Are you?
So
okay, you see, that's what people say.
Does that give me access
to that gives you no right
the great cupboard of ginger lampoonery? I think it might do. Okay. Listen, so Boris Becker could go to jail tomorrow.
He could go to jail tomorrow.
The newspaper said it could be 7 years.
Well, the maximum sentence for the offence is 7 years, but very rarely do maximum sentences get handed out. The absolute maximum sentence. It's a very difficult sentencing exercise because, you're dealing with someone who fundamentally, yes, if you send him to prison for, let's say, months or even a couple of years, that sends some sort of message to someone, I suppose, but really it's just the taxpayer paying to lock someone up who, frankly, if we can't use Boris Becker to teach children about stuff or to do something useful in the community, to encourage urban sport and all of the kind of things that you would hope that a multiple Wimbledon champion would be able to do, as a more productive use of his time than sitting in a cell somewhere, I think we're just wasting our time. It's an extraordinary opportunity.
I think that would be a great example.
Make him spend an entire year doing community work out there and training young kids in sport and tennis and everything else. Use the skills he's got rather than waste them in prison, which sadly is the story for too many people in prison. Lots of people in prison who could be doing something useful, and I suspect Boris Becker, if he is sent to prison, will be a classic example of why prison's a waste of time.
I would absolutely agree with that, but also we need him there for the Wimbledon commentary, because I don't take Wimbledon seriously until you turn on the telly and there's that sign: the Sue Barker, John McEnroe, Jimmy Connors and Bjorn Borg. I mean, three of the greatest tennis players of all time, right there.
It's true. And
then Tim turns up. Hello.
I know.
Looks like it's kicking off on court 7.
Never won anything, did he, Tim? Nothing.
Couple of
nice guys.
A couple of semi-finals.
Yeah, he had a couple of semis.
He did. Yes, stop it. He did. And then, of course, Andy Murray came along and did rather well for a bit.
Yes.
But we've got Emma, but is she
Grand Slam champions? You see, that's what it's all about in the end. She doesn't look like she's having a great season. She's on her 5th coach now.
I know. Yeah, she's going through them like a dose of salt.
I know, exactly.
But I do want to see Boris Becker not jailed for that. That's my own legal reason.
He could coach Emma for free.
Now that would be good, wouldn't it?
There you go.
Yeah. A German coaching a Brit is always going to be contentious, isn't it?
Yeah, but he's become
that good sporting rival.
He's become an adopted Brit, hasn't he? I mean,
of course he has. He's lived here forever, and he's just one of those. You think of those kind of players, and again, I mentioned McEnroe and Connors deliberately because there is a synergy between those kind of three guys.
Well, you have the elite sort of group who have won multiple Grand Slam championships, basically, and in an era when we've had. We've had Sampras, and then we went on to obviously the enormous successes of Nadal and Federer and everything else. Anyone who was able to, amongst these greats, was able to still win Grand Slams and multiple Grand Slams. It's an extraordinary achievement.
And you can imagine, it is tragic, but you can imagine but he's got a great story to tell. You can imagine a night out with Boris. You can't imagine a night out with Djokovic, can you? It wouldn't quite be as...
Oh, no. Can you imagine me lecturing you about vaccines and stuff?
A bit of vaccines, and he'd want to go to the vegan restaurant. If you said you want a beer, he'd probably melt on the spot, you know. Whereas Boris said, like, he'd go in the club, the sea of people would part, he'd get the table in the corner, they'd bring the tequila over. And he'd be dancing. It would just be a top night. Chris, stay with us. Chris Daw QC is with us here on Talk TV. Back with more from him and his observations on some of the other legal stories this week coming next. 3:20 on Talk TV, live from the Talk Radio studios. Chris Daw QC is with us in the studio. Chris comes in for every few weeks. On occasions we invite him in, but on the other occasion he just turns up once in a while. We think, well, we've got a spare 20 minutes, so in he comes for a bit of a legal chat about things in the news. Did you see this story of the prison guards deferring to kind of radical Islamists in jail?
Yeah, I did, and that's a story which I suspect has more truth than most of these stories, because you know, they have been. They have had radical Islamist prisoners kept in special secure units now for quite some years, and they're kept together in you know, close proximity to each other, and they use all sorts of tricks to try to get their way in terms of, you know, using the various justifications around religious practices to exclude prison officers from prayers in the room, etc. And I have to say, I think it's very concerning. I think it is very concerning that we are allowing radical Islamist terrorists to associate and potentially to plan activity.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was extremism that got them in there in the first place.
Well, exactly.
So there you are, kind of practising the same, some of the same problems.
When I was thinking about this, and you were going to talk about this, I was thinking about this, and if you think about it, it's not that different to what happens when anyone goes into prison. Now, people go into prison, they tend to associate with people who know a lot about crime, and they learn about crime, and they come out more criminalised than when they went in. And you know, in most cases, that doesn't result in terrorist attacks. But when we put terrorists all together and we allow them to associate in the way that apparently we do in some of these secure units, I think it's a recipe for disaster, and I think that they should be separated. I don't think those who have been involved in terrorist activity should be kept together to continue to, you know,
because clearly, you know, the smart money would say that is a clear upshot of putting extremists all in the same place. You become even more, you compound each other's belief systems. And,
exactly.
And in this case, they were able to sort of seize control of wings, and prison officers didn't argue, and they said, no, you can't come in here, we're having prayers because you're not Muslim. And even some of the non-Muslim prisoners, they were told, if you want to be around here, you've got to sort of almost convert to what we're doing, etc.
It's totally wrong.
I mean, that is all wrong.
It's totally wrong, and totally counterproductive. If you're ever trying to steer people away from a path that they've chosen, whether it be terrorism or anything else, the last thing you should do is put them all together so they can talk about doing it again, which I'm sure is sadly what's happening.
Now, I know you talk about the futility of prison, and what you see is a counterintuitive system that simply does the very opposite to what it sets out to do. There is one group of people that I think, you know, we can all agree could do with, you know, maybe, you know, I don't know, 20 years in the state pen, as it were. And we're talking about the Just Stop Oil protesters.
Okay.
Gluing their bits and pieces to the M25, stopping people, blocking petrol stations now. So people turning up, going on, you know, to get a couple of gallon of diesel or whatever, and blocking the petrol. That should carry clearly a mandatory life sentence.
You've been litres for quite a long time, don't you?
Did I say gallon?
You said gallon.
Did I? Yeah.
Yeah, old man numbers. Anyway, I mean, I'm reasonably sympathetic to people who want to protest against things, provided it doesn't cause a danger to other people. So we've had this conversation before, I know, but if they're blocking hospitals or they're blocking, you know, key roads that are necessary for the police or the emergency services to move around. But I think protesting outside or blocking a petrol station as a protest against global warming seems a pretty sensible way of protesting to me. I mean,
yeah, you can protest, but can you stop everybody else filling up their car with their literage?
No, you can't. You can't clearly stop everybody, and there aren't enough protesters, I suspect, for that purpose. But I think as a publicity stunt to block access to or glue yourself to a petrol pump. It seems like a pretty sensible form of protest. Since their main argument is that we're burning too many fossil fuels, protesting against the sale of petrol and diesel seems pretty logical.
Quite consistent with your belief system.
Well, exactly. Yeah, it seems like a good idea to me. I mean, if they were blocking a hospital or doing something else that had unrelated, then or even frankly, a lot of the time just blocking streets.
I agree with. If you were the protester, then that is, you're right. That's exactly what you would do. If you want to protest against a lack of funding in hospitals, then go to a hospital and stand outside with your placard. I get that. However, it should also be the duty, surely, of the police to come along and say, well done with your superglue endeavours, but we're now going to very quickly, and it won't be nice, we're going to take your hand off the tarmac now, and there's one way to do this, rip. Because you're holding up an entire carriageway.
Yeah, well, that would be the case if we were in Russia, Ian, where there's no right to protest and where we don't have there's no civil rights at all. But we're not. We're in Britain, and we have a long history of respecting people's right to protest.
But I need to get to the Clackett Lane services, and I can't get there because Dodge Pop McDougal and his dodgy mates have glued themselves to the middle lane.
Yeah,
what
but
am I
what
supposed
happens
to do?
if you know what happens to a hand if you rip it off of tarmac with glue on it, don't you? You know what happens? They're going to end up in a hospital, and it's going to cost us a load of money to fix their hand, and someone's going to get sued.
It'd be a graze, wouldn't it?
A graze.
It'd be just a bit of a graze.
Should we do that live on it? Should we super glue you to your desk, Ian, and see what happens?
Well, a friend of mine was doing an interview with a protester who glued himself to a microphone at the time. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, fancy that.
Here's a question from Steve in Lancashire. He says, can you ask Chris if sending infected patients to care homes was unlawful and resulted in thousands of deaths, we understand, then those who instructed are criminally culpable for unlawful killing of thousands of people and should be prosecuted as such. It's interesting. This was the conclusions where it was ruled that it was unlawful for lots of people to be released. Of course, it was a time of high COVID and hospitals protect the NHS. I mean, what's the legality around
that? Yeah, well,
that?
so there's two different kinds of law that the question involves. One is the sort of public law about the law applying to the NHS and to government services in terms of when it's lawful to discharge someone from a hospital and what the duty of care is, and that's more of a civil issue. What the questioner is asking about is, if someone is sent to a care home and then people die, could the person who made that decision be prosecuted for manslaughter of those who died? I think it would be a tough ask because you'd have to establish a whole range of factors, including direct cause of death, who was directly responsible for the decision, and I think it would be a tricky task to bring a criminal.
There wasn't really any testing then either. So
no, I think
this was largely looking at people going, do they look ill?
Exactly. I don't feel, it doesn't feel to me like a criminal case, but and rarely does the intervention of the criminal law do much good in these cases. But it's certainly a learning.
So notionally, it would be a sound premise, you'd think.
Well,
it could be a legal proceeding. But the manifestation would be that it would.
Well, I think it would be very difficult to prove a crime because, of course, you'd have to prove it beyond reasonable doubt and all the other things that go with a criminal prosecution. I think my view would be let's learn from these things. Let's look at what went wrong. If people have committed serious kind of errors that have led to death, then of course they might be fired, or there might be other sorts of consequences. But I think looking to prosecute lots of people arising out of the pandemic isn't going to be a healthy.
And then you get into
resource.
Are you going to be prosecuting politicians? Are you going to be prosecuting nurses who literally opened the door and said, thank you, Mrs. Miggins, have a nice day, and off she went to
the politicians one, there you go. Now you may have started something in because...
Well, I can think of lots of reasons that Matt Hancock should be in jail, frankly, but that's a whole separate debate, isn't it, largely? It's interesting, isn't it, when it comes to, medical negligence, that's a whole other area of law, isn't it? Is that... We're often told, we've only got 20 seconds here, we're often told it's the one profession that doesn't really learn very well from previous mistakes.
The medical profession? I think increasingly they do, but I think the problem, frankly, for the medical profession is lawyers. Lawyers not like me, because it's not my kind of work, but I think when doctors are constantly at risk of being sued, then there is a danger that they practice defensively and that they don't admit their mistakes, and that's wrong.
That's it. Chris, thank you. Always good to see you in a few weeks' time.
Likewise, Ian.
Chris Daw QC with us here on Talk Radio, Talk TV. We'll have some news headlines, and then we're back with more from you coming next.